You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, the Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, and with me, as always, my partner in crime with the soundboard in line, Skyler Timmons.
Hello there.
Always prepared. We call our soundboard the third host, officially replacing Mac. I've been sick as a dog all weekend, and the Rockies sure didn't help for the most part, but we're going to go ahead and dive right on to it. A lot of stuff sort of happening in the last week, focused around a player who I don't think anyone expected, and we're just going to dive right into it. It's Jake Cave.
Mm-hmm.
Jake Cave has gotten a lot of hate from Rockies fans. We've certainly discussed him at length on his, certainly overblown role on this team so far this season, with how much he's starting, how much he's playing. But he sort of proved why it's important to have a guy like that, like him, on this team at the tail end of the Los Angeles Dodgers series.
It was in game 2 of that series.
It was game 2, man.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought it was later in the series.
No, it was game 2 of 4.
It was a long feeling series then.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, that's what happens when we play the Dodgers. Jake Cave is out in right field, and Victor Vodnik is pitching, and he induces what definitely looks like a strike 3 on an unchecked check swing. From pretty much every angle, it looks like it, probably should have been called a strike. I can sort of see why maybe it wouldn't be, but it looks like a strike. And the very next pitch is demolished for a home run. And you can see Jake Cave is just absolutely livid. He's shouting and screaming from right field as he's coming in. He gives the umpire, Lance Barkdale, who made that check swing call, just an absolute earful. Jake Cave saying that the umpire told him that it wasn't even close, which just set him off. Jake Cave was running hot pretty much the rest of that game. Later in the game, you could see his teammates, Alan Trejo and some of the other coaches, having to keep Jake Cave and sort of drag him into the dugout because he was still trying to go after first base umpire Lance Barksdale over that call.
Well, yeah, because of the context of it, Rockies blew a huge lead in this 9th inning. They give up the home run. That check swing would have ended the game. Rockies win by like a run or something. And they're able to just narrowly escape. But no, they give up the home run, gives the Dodgers the lead, or they extends their lead. And that's what, after they finally get that last out, Jake Cave, that's when he wants to basically go sucker punch somebody. And then he was scheduled to hit in the bottom of the 9th, but he doesn't get his chance. But that's when they're like having to hold him back still because he was going back after that umpire after the loss once the game finally ended. So within 15 minutes, he was pretty unhappy as an individual.
Yeah, and going into that inning, the Rockies were ahead 9-4. And Tyler Kinley was brought into the game, and Tyler Kinley just has not looked right since his injury where he had to have surgery. He hasn't. And, he had a very tough game, and he gave up, 4 earned runs and
a grand slam.
Yeah. And it should never have gotten to the point where he was still in the game. So let's call a spade there, that it was a very poorly handled situation, but they got out of it. It was 9-8. The game is over at that point with that check swing, if it's called correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes on to be an 11-9 loss for the Rockies. And, Jake Cave got a lot of publicity in baseball world and in the Rockies fandom for just being absolutely furious that night. And it was kind of nice to see. I'll admit I was very pumped up to see Jake Cave getting that angry. And and really looking ready to throw some hands, because in games like that, you want to see your guys show some emotion. Sometimes you want to see them get upset. You want to see them, ready to do something a little stupid. And Bud Black was ejected very, pretty quickly, hollering from the dugout about the check swing call, but he didn't really go out and get his money's worth. And so Jake Cave instead got his money's worth. And I think, honestly, I appreciate seeing that sometimes.
Yeah, and it's brings up this conversation I think we wanted to have, because, like you said, no, and I think you've been pretty vocal about it, of people's displeasure of why is Jake Cave on this team? Why is he playing so much? All this stuff. And it's moments like that brings up the conversation of what role does a guy like Jake Cave have on a team like the Rockies, but it can be expanded out, just teams in general. These role player veteran guys, what role do they actually play on a team? And is it a necessary role, Evan, or is it just kind of a nice luxury that you can have on a team? I think this whole thing with Jake Cave this week has really brought that back up on the broadcast. They keep calling him the man of the people, the people's champion, and everything. And it just brings that up. Like, what does Jake Cave bring to the table, and is it something the Rockies really need at this point?
And for what I've said about Jake Cave, it's not necessarily that I don't think he shouldn't be on the team, though I think at some point, his time with the Rockies is going to end. It's more that he hasn't really been used in the role that he was brought in. Like, he was brought in to be the backup outfielder and, occasionally spell Brenton Doyle for if he needed a rest day. And he has started a lot. He has played a lot, which is, I don't think, what any of us wanted to see from Jake Cave. If Cave had been playing far less, I think we would have had a lot less complaints about, his presence on the team, because where he's at right now, he's got 128 at bats, which is, one of the higher levels on the team for a guy who's supposed to be a backup, but an OPS of just 648. Like, he's not an amazing hitter. He's a really solid defensive outfielder. I will definitely give him that. He's made some great plays. And he has a clutch hit or two. He's come through in the clutch with a couple hits sometimes. In the following game with the Rockies, he ended up being the game-winning run. That's a big deal. But I think moreover, when you have this veteran guy in the clubhouse, what you want for him to be is a guy who's going to back up his other teammates and be a good clubhouse presence, pick up his other guys. And that's what we've seen from Jake Cave, especially, after this whole thing. What is he doing post-game? He's picking up Brenton Doyle. He's picking up Victor Vodnik. He says after the game, Vic is a stud. 9 times out of 10, he blows the next one right by him. I was confident in Vic. I thought Vic would get out of it. He's out there in his post-game presser with the media, lifting his teammates up. And that's what you want to see from these kinds of guys. I bet Victor Vodnik felt awful after that. I certainly would. But here's Jake Cave, and he's trying to lift Vic up. And I think that's really important. He's showing the emotion. He's showing that he's got the backs of his teammates. He's being a good teammate. That is what you want from a guy like Jake Cave.
Mm-hmm. And my perspective with Jake Cave this whole season, yeah, they brought him in that way. But as we know in baseball, plans change all the time. I'm sure they weren't expecting what's his name, Chris Bryant, to be injured so much again. And I'm sure they didn't expect, I still don't think the Rockies really planned on Brenton Doyle being as good as he has been this season. Hence another trade of bringing in Greg Jones. They just wanted to hedge their bets of, what if Doyle doesn't figure it out offensively? Here's our backups type of thing. It's still weird. I wonder what Bradley Zimmer thinks looking at this roster. And I spent spring training with him.
I could have made it. Come on.
Or like Sam Hilliard, who, looks like if it's not Zimmer, it's going to be Hilliard. But then they bring in Jake Cave for cash considerations. And that plan of, we want a guy who's a backup outfielder, can hit left-handed, and can play center field for Brenton Doyle. Well, Brenton Doyle's playing every day. Staying healthy. He's hitting. wonderful defense, everything's working. But oh no, Nolan Jones is injured. He's struggling. He's on the injury list. We lose him for a little over like a month and a half, something like that. Oh no, Chris Bryant's injured again. So guess Montero's playing first base all the time, and Michael Toglia is struggling a lot. We better send him back down. Oh no, Charlie Blackmon's old. He's our DH type of thing. Oh no, Hunter Goodman's and Sean Bouchard aren't really that good in the outfield, and they weren't hitting. So these all weird circumstances found them turning to Jake Cave throughout that first month, because he was coming in to the game, and we talked about it and we celebrated that. Coming into the game, he'd get a nice hit late in the game. And with Cave, he's contributing when he is playing. Like, it's not world shattering, and those bats could definitely be better served somewhere else. But still, at the end of the day, you want to try and win ball games. And Jake Cave contributes to that. Wonderful defense. The best outfielder coming off that bench. And he does have that clutch gene with 2 outs and runners in scoring position, just 17 plate appearances. But he's got a 991 OPS with 2 outs and runners in scoring position. So like you said, he's thrown out clutch hits. Games are close. He's turning in clutch hits, getting on base, putting the ball in play. He's doing all these little things that really, in the grand scheme of things, probably don't make a huge difference for the Rockies as they head towards 100 losses. But it's a key role, and I think they were talking about it on the broadcast of what a guy like Cave can do as a role player, a guy who really isn't expected to play every day, at least throughout his career. When he's with the Twins and the Phillies, wasn't really playing every day, and part of that was performance. But he's that guy who can cycle in, still be a valuable piece off the bench. He's just started way more with the Rockies than he probably should, but I think it's a lot of its circumstances, and I think he's accepted that. And I've seen some nice comments from Cave where he's like, there's guys that get mad when they get sent down, and I don't care. I'll play down in AAA if I have to, if that's what the team needs. Like, I like being in the big leagues, but if that's what the team needs, then okay. I'm not going to get mad about it. I'll just keep doing my thing. And so I think as much him being on the field, I think the way he carries himself has been a good role model for the Michael Tolias and the Hunter Goodman especially, because now Goodman, we're starting to see him hit. He's not playing the outfield as much, thankfully, but he's getting comfortable behind the dish and hitting. And so they have that veteran presence who can bring that fire on the bench that they're not getting from a Charlie Blackmon even, or a Chris Bryant. Like Cave wears his emotions on his sleeve. Those other two are a lot more reserved.
And, we've really come such a long way from the is what it is. The it is what it is. When Jake Cave was first traded to the Rockies, he got that interview and they asked him, how he felt to have been traded to the Rockies. And he says, it is what it is. And I think he got dunked on a lot for that. And, looking back at it in context with a lot of his other comments, I think it was much less a negative comment of, oh, it is what it is. And more of,
this is the way the game is.
From him. He rolls with the punches. It's like you said, he flat out said, you need to send me down to AAA, whatever. That's what I'll do. I'll help the team whatever I can. And that's really been the Jake Cave we're seeing. Jake Cave is another one of those veteran guys that the Rockies bring in where you look at him and you look at his conduct and you go, this guy would make a really good coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's unfortunate that he's kind of having to waste away on a 100-loss team after coming over from a team that was on the cusp of the World Series and is like a World Series favorite this year. Now, I could understand if he was a little bit mad initially, like, I'm getting traded to the Rockies, like this garbage team, and I'm with the Phillies. Like, oh, come on.
Like, as we've discussed,
no, I'm not even worth a player.
Exactly an appealing destination.
Like, I'm not even worth a player. They just wanted cash for me. But he's come over and he can roll with those punches. He is a consummate professional. And you can look at him when he does play. You can tell that the players like being around Jake Cave. He's there joking with them on the field after the clock off that we'll talk about later on a little bit. He's right there, joking with McMahon and Trejo. No, he's getting up in there. So he wears his emotions on his sleeve, and I think the cusp of that of him just absolutely losing his mind in right field. As soon as the home run goes over the fence, he turns around and he's screaming into the field. towards the umpire. You need that sometimes, and we like to see guys have emotion. We know it's frustrating for them this season, but you don't have to be stoic all the time, because Jake Cave losing it like that shows he cares. And that's the fire that sometimes we miss from a Chris Bryant. A guy that doesn't show that. Do you even care that you're here? But here's Jake Cave, this random 31-year-old veteran, really hasn't had that great of a career. Is bounced around from some good teams, and he's coming to whatever the Rockies are, and he's showing that and losing his mind in a random loss to the Dodgers in the middle of June. And that will not matter whatsoever in the grand scheme of things, and him showing that he cares that much about his teammate and the game itself, like that says a lot.
It does. And you look at his quotes after the game in his post-game press conference. He was asked sort of about the optics of it, of him just going on this absolute tirade, unleashing the fury. And he says, yeah, I don't think it's the best look ever, but I'd rather be fiery and pulling for my guys than not caring.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really is. And it's something that we've kind of missed a lot, because there's a lot of stoicism. As much as we love Charlie Blackmon, he's a pretty stoic guy. And you'll see him joking and smiling and running around trying to get people with the water bucket. Like, he's always the guy out there first with the water bucket. But during the game itself, he tends to be very stoic. He watches, he waits, he listens. He doesn't wear a lot of the emotion on his sleeve. We see that with all of this coaching staff too. Bud Black, Mike Redmond, Darryl Scott, all of them are very much that same mold of the stoic older manager kind of type. Jake Cave, who looks about 10 to 20 years older than he actually is sometimes, but is only 31 years old, is out there and he wears his feelings on his sleeve, and it's refreshing is what it is, because it's not something we've really had a lot of. And what's funny is some of the other guys, when they get upset and they, let that anger show through, have gotten really dunked on by the fandom a lot. Your Kyle Freelands, your Ryan McMahon sometimes. But I think also because it was something that happened against the Rockies, it went against the Rockies, that it's really endeared Jake Cave towards a lot of the fan base.
And it's like in those situations, like a Kyle Freeland getting mad, or some other guy, they're really mad at themselves. Jake Cave had no effect on what happened in that in that top of the ninth. No, he's standing out there in right field. But for your right fielder to just start screaming into it.
And he's saying, oh, I saw it clear as day all the way.
Yeah.
No, you didn't, Jake. If you saw that perfect clear as day all the way up from right field, and he was playing fairly deep and right.
Yeah. But the fact that he can show that emotion going to bat for somebody else on his team, for his pitcher, a rookie pitcher. There's the veteran standing up for a rookie on his team. And after his team, he's talked about it before. He's like, if they have to trade me, if that helps the team, I'm okay with that. I'd like to stay. I love it here, which is always a weird thing. Like, we see those polls from The Athletic. They're like, oh, the Rockies don't have a very good reputation. But then, like, a Jake Cave comes, he's like, I love it here. Rockies are there's a weird dichotomy there, but him to be like that and then go for like, no, there's some good things happening here. There's some good players. There's good stuff happening. It just hasn't come to fruition yet. But I think that's what it boils down to me, is Jake Cave showing that he cares about the Colorado Rockies in 2024, that he cares about winning ball games in those situations. Plays with that fire. He's going to go out there. They're down 10-0. He's still going to go out there and give you a very good at bat, or he's going to compete there to the very last out. And that's something we're missing from other players on the team, because he's actually playing. You compare it again to Chris Bryant, and we won't go into him. Does Chris Bryant even care about being on the Rockies? I couldn't tell you if he does or not. But Jake Cave, after this past week, he cares about the Colorado Rockies.
And I think that's really the long and short of it, is just seeing that he cares. Because and you know, you bring up like that altitude pull. What I really wonder, just sort of close things off, is the guys who don't want to come here, which is admittedly a lot of players, are not necessarily guys who have experience with the Colorado Rockies, because we do have plenty of guys who come here and go, wow, we like it here.
Yeah.
You know, Brent Suter, Mike Moustakas, Jake Cave. We have these guys who come here and they do enjoy their time here. And, you know, that's not saying the Rockies don't have a lot of problems, because they do.
But those big money back guys do not want to be here. This ultra competitive, your Arenados, unfortunately, your Stories, your Tulowitzkis, other guys like that. It's weird, but Jake Cave, the caveman of the people, he's all right in my book.
Same here. I definitely he earned a ton of respect from me.
There you go. That's all he was asking for, Evan.
Respect. Hey, he's earned it from me. I originally was going to supposed to go to Saturday's game and had to bow out due to not being well. But I was literally like, I wonder if I could find like a Jake Cave ball over at the Authentic stand or something. That could be fun.
Is your Jake Cave City Connect in the mail?
He's got he's gotta abide by the rule, which is you gotta hit a grand slam or a walk-off. But that's going to do it here for our first part. We're going to take a really quick break, and we come back. More injury updates. You know, Jake Cave playing a lot more because of all the injuries. Let's talk about those injuries. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude. I'm Evan. That's Skyler. This is a cat. And we're back here to talk about the Colorado Rockies. And there's just been, you know, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's been a lot of injuries this season. Really just kind of unfortunate with how many there have been. We're starting to get people back, which is great, but then we get people back and we lose them again, which is frustrating. So let's start with the getting people back. Kyle Freeland came back, pitched his first start since April here on our day of recording, and looked great. Honestly, his velo was back up to what is normal for him, which is low to mid 90s, 92, maybe 93 at most. And I think that works for him, honestly, because, you know, what he was throwing last year, where his fastball was topping out at 89, that was never going to be, that's just not going to work. And he had a difficult season because of it. And I think he came into this year, so in spring training and early in the year, he was throwing like 94, sometimes even 95. Yeah. That was way up for him. And honestly, I think that's how he hurt his elbow, is trying to force that extra velocity.
No, Evan, it was the pitch clock and all that.
Because this is a guy who's never thrown that hard. Like those were career high velocities for him. And for starters, especially guys who throw a lot of innings, that's not necessarily sustainable if that's not what you're used to throwing. And I think that's what messed up his elbow. And now he's come back, and in all of his rehab starts, he was throwing that. He's got that velocity, you know, 91 to 93. He's got that lockdown, and that works for him as sort of a tricky left-hander, you know, big arsenal kind of guy. So that works. His breaking pitches looked good today. You know, he only struck out, I think, 2 batters, but he worked 6 scoreless innings. He looked good. He carried a no-hitter for most of the game. And it's really nice to have him back, and I hope that he can really get his season on track. You know, he had not been pitching well to start the season. He had been pitching through that elbow injury, and you know, he lowered his ERA by like 2 whole runs today. So here's hoping
from a 13 down to a 9.
Yeah, here's hoping that he can continue to keep that up. It was really nice to have him back on the mound here. The other starter that's worth updating on is Germán Márquez. Germán pitched his second non-ACL rehab start last night at time of recording with the Spokane Indians, and he's looking pretty solid as well. He's getting those pitch counts up. You know, the Rockies don't want to call him up until he's really getting past, 60, 70, 80 pitches in an outing. They want him to be, stretched out and ready to go. But he's now had 2 pretty good rehab starts where he's shown his strikeout stuff. He's shown his pitch placement. and he's getting, deeper and deeper into these games. So, Skyler, what are your thoughts on Freeland and Márquez?
It's just good to get some of your boys back. I think because dating back to last year, just injuries decimating the roster, losing Márquez. We were hoping with Freeland this year, and then opening day, he just gets dumped on by the Diamondbacks, just looking awful his first couple of starts in April. So it's good to get Freeland back, especially, and to see him come out and do well on the mound. They're talking about he's trying to get more consistent with his arm slot and his mechanics, which I really think has been the problem for Freeland since 2018. Has that incredible year. And we know after that season, they kind of messed with his mechanics a little bit, and that just threw him into a funk. And then he's just been in a funk ever since. Now he's shown flashes, other times not so good of those flashes. So finding him getting consistent back will be really nice. And when we're paying him all that money, the contract that he's on, you want those guys pitching. But it's highlighting, okay, there's going to be a crunch with this rotation here sooner and sooner. In a couple of weeks, we'll get Germán back, which is going to be really awesome. I think Germán's one that we've all been missing him in the clubhouse, on the field, and just seeing him pitch in this rotation. And hopefully he can get him back on track, and then he can come and contribute for the rest of the year. But it's just nice to see guys healthy, because you hate seeing them get injured, see arms getting hurt, and really threatening careers. And hopefully they can both just stay on track, get back healthy, and keep rolling, because Lord knows we need it.
Yeah, Germán, especially in the clubhouse, we know how much a lot of the young pitchers, especially the young Spanish-speaking pitchers and other players, really look up to Germán. We've talked about before how much Anthony Molina has really, flown underneath Germán's wing since being obtained by the Rockies. And I think that's a really important role, especially with, we know Germán got along well with Elias Diaz and Sensi, but also guys like Tovar and Adael Amador and stuff like that. He's just a really good veteran presence. And I think it's important to have one of those who is a Spanish-speaking veteran presence in the clubhouse, because it sort of helps even up that divide. That's why we've always talked about, whoever the next manager of the Rockies is, it would be nice if they would be bilingual. Just the ability to speak with all their players. But yeah, having Freeland back and being so close to having Germán back is, I think, great for morale, both for the fans and for the guys in the clubhouse.
Yeah, and they herald back because those guys were part of your successful teams in 2017, 2018. Unfortunately, it's kind of been downhill since then for the team in general, and those guys have struggled at times. They've followed the same trajectory the Rockies have. There's been some good moments in there, but generally everyone involved has struggled. So hopefully they can come back and just kind of show some of that magic again. Because, again, that's what we need. You're in a 100-loss season again. You need those glimpses of hope, and he'll be under contract for one more season at least, unless they decide to figure out another extension. But we'll see what happens. But it was good to see just Germán on a mound again, watching those minor league games. Shout out to the Fresno Grizzlies, Spokane Indians, getting those broadcasts in and everything. And we'll just keep watching his rehab starts. He'll probably, next stop should be Double-A for him.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. Honestly, for me, what makes it kind of fun, and I know this is sort of silly, is seeing the guy who you're so used to seeing in his Rockies uniform in these new minor league uniforms. Because when Germán was in the minors, none of these guys were our affiliates.
Yeah,
for Double-A and not Double-A, for low and high A.
Yeah.
So we've never seen him in a Fresno Grizzlies uniform before. We've never seen him in a Spokane Indians uniform before. And you know what? It was pretty neat. I liked it. And I know that's something kind of silly to be like, yeah, that's a lot of, it was a lot of fun. And especially because, come to think of it, I didn't even think of this. When he was in A-level ball, he wasn't even with the Rockies.
Nope.
I hadn't even thought of that. He was assigned to Hartford after we picked him up.
Yeah, 2016 goes to Hartford and then finishes the year with Albuquerque and then comes up to the Rockies.
Which is, I'm really excited just to be watching him again. It makes me happy. I love Germán. He's one of my favorite pitchers. He's one of my favorite Rockies.
Yeah.
And we've had some other Rockies come back too. Brendan Rodgers is back and hitting pretty well since returning. They've sort of eased him back into the lineup. He's played second base once. He's been the DH once, but he's played pretty well considering they actually had to speed up his timetable for return. They wanted him to play more than just one rehab start down in AAA Albuquerque, but unfortunately, Adael Amador was injured the other day.
And luckily that's just kind of what they're saying is a mild oblique strain, so nothing too serious is what they're saying. He suffered that earlier this year in Hartford, but obliques are never good. Like, they're just the most annoying nagging injury.
They're really tricky because you either recover from them really fast, or it takes forever. And I hate to bring up Chris Bryant again, but that's been the issue with his is that he's just not recovering from it at all.
Yeah. Or like a Dodgers example, Max Muncy's had an oblique strain since like early May.
He's on the 60-day now.
Oh, they moved him over.
Yeah.
And yet he's still like top 5, top 6 in all-star voting for third base.
Yeah, well, that's Dodgers fans for you.
Take him off the ballot.
But for Amador, it's a bummer that this is how his current big league tenure is going to end, because now that Rodgers is back, it's pretty likely, according to the Rockies brass, that Amador, once he's activated from the IL, is going to be optioned back to Double-A Hartford.
Why go back to Hartford? I understand why. They just kind of brought him up to see just give him a look. And like, yeah, here's some things he can work on and just get an exposure. Here's what we're hopefully maybe seeing at the start of next season. But it's unfortunate they just had to kind of end with him getting injured. But I understand. I was fine with, probably should send him down again because he's got an exposure. Like, yeah, he's got some things to work on. He isn't quite ready for the big league pitching just yet. He's almost there, but
he's close, because we really were seeing before he got hurt, his at bats were becoming more and more just consistent. He was looking much more solid. His first couple days in the big leagues, he was free swinging at pretty much everything, and so much of that is, what do you call it? The jitters, where, he's gone straight. He's 21 years old. He's gone straight from Double-A to the bigs. You're gonna be a little nervous, and his numbers look a lot worse than they actually are, because if you look at just, let's say, his last 5 games with the Rockies, he only struck out once before going down with injury. Drew 1 walk, struck out once, hit a double, had 3 hits. So it's like, yeah, that's not perfect, but it can tell you that his eye, which is something that he's had at every level, was improving, was getting there, that he was starting to adjust. And that's what we were seeing from Jordan Beck as well before he got hurt. So it's been a huge bummer, because we've now had 2 really exciting rookie prospects come up, start to make adjustments, and then get hurt.
That's just our luck. But yeah, no, it's Rodgers is back, and it's just kind of he enters in this weird thing where, like, yeah, he's back, but we're just kind of waiting, like, how long is he going to be on this team still? That's where he's at. Now that he's back too, you're like, how long do we keep him around? Because I'm there, and we'll get him back eventually. Even by like September, I expect him to get a call up, maybe, unless they let him go play in the playoffs. But I don't know. It's weird stuff. But hey,
the whole situation,
he hit a home run. Weird. He hit a home run, then we can ask that. But Rockies, stop. And this to you, Bud Black, wherever you are. Stop batting Brendan Rodgers 4th. Just stop it. He's not a cleanup hitter.
But he could be.
He could bat he could bat 2nd. He could bat 5th. He could bat 6th. Not 4th. Put Michael Tolley or somebody else in 4th. Hunter Goodman. Somebody with some power.
Yeah, big bopper.
Or, Ryan McMahon can bat 4th. And Ezekiel Tovar can bat second or bat third. Somebody else can bat second. I don't care. Stop putting him fourth. That's
This
my
has
2
been
cents.
lineup construction talk with Skyler Timmons.
I'm just sick of the Rockies' stupid commitment to it's got to be right, left, right, left, right, left. Like, enough of that.
This is not me playing MLB The Show.
Yeah. Jacob Stallings batting fourth. Why? It's surprising and it's weird. Why?
Well, other guys that have been up and down, Jake Bird and Sean Bouchard both came back from the injured list and are both likely now to head back to the injured list. Sean Bouchard was down with an ankle sprain. He got called up pretty quickly, and then now is having some back issues.
Here we go.
My back! Oh, my back!
It's Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
I'm pretty concerned, honestly, with this training stuff. Like, I know nothing about sports medicine. I'm not going to lie on that. But the amount of hamstring and muscle sprains, in addition to back injuries that we've had in the last couple of years, does worry me a little bit.
It's just this kind of stuff happens too more in summer, especially like sprains, like hamstring pulls and stuff, just because guys are dehydrated too in this hotter weather, and these guys are stubborn. They don't drink as much when they need to.
Eat bananas. Keep a packet of mustard in your back pocket like John Gray used to.
Yeah, but they don't think of that. And, some of these things you just can't prepare for. Things just happen. Like, no amount of training and stretching and stuff. You can do as much as you can, but things are still going to happen. So I wouldn't blame the training staff or anything, because a lot of them, they do as much as they can for prevention, but a lot of their stuff is recovery type stuff, I think, and taking care of that. So it's
it sounds like we need to get Munenori Kawasaki on this training staff, because monkeys never cramp.
It's true. Yeah, but I know, like, Keith Duggar, that whole crew, Mike Jasperson, all those guys. No, they're really good in what they do. And, it's just stuff you can't really take care of, especially with, like, back stuff. That's really tricky, because as we've seen with Chris Bryant, he's got a degenerative back issue. No, Mike Trout has a super rare back issue. Some things you just really can't do. You can do as much as you can stretching, but it's never going to be foolproof, and injuries are just going to happen.
I think it's just tough because it always feels like they come in these big waves, and then you just look for somebody to point the finger at. And I'm not necessarily trying to blame the training staff. It's just like, it's the first thing you think of when you're going through this big spate of injuries is, well, what's the training staff doing?
Yeah.
I have no doubt that, Keith Duggar and his whole team are, I'm not saying that they're bad at their jobs or anything. It's more of just, I can't help but be concerned about the amount of injuries that we are suffering again this season after having a ton last season and the season before, especially these back injuries, which have been pretty persistent.
And the thing that I always see with injuries too is it's not just conducive to us. Like, everybody's dealing with injuries and all that stuff. It's just, I guess, the nature of the game. But it, like you're saying, it's the repetitive issues that we have. Like, I'm sick of back issues. I'm so sick of them.
Yeah, it's really, it's the back issues more than anything that worry me, because I feel like we've had a ton of them over the last few seasons.
Yeah.
And some of them, you can rule out, like, Chris Bryant. We now know that he has the, big back issues, but it's frustrating. And it's frustrating to see, we just got Jake Bird and Sean Bouchard back. And now, Bud Black says if they're not feeling better tomorrow, then they've got to go back on the IL.
Yeah.
And that, that's frustrating. And we get some good stuff. Like Sam Hilliard is back on the big league roster now. That's pretty cool.
And
but it's
because Charlie Blackmon went down with a hamstring, and
yeah. And for Chuck, it's tough because he's been having, a lot of people are dunking on him. For a guy who's 38 years old, he's really not having that bad of a year. And
all things considered. And it really stank to see him pull up short at third base, clutching the back of his leg. And then he tried to trot home when he was driven in, and you could just tell that's going to be an IL stint. Didn't stretch his hammy enough. I know. Whenever I played intramural softball in college, and this is for some reason they had a season in the winter in Rexburg, Idaho, which it gets pretty cold there, Evan, in like October, from like September to or like October through November. It's pretty
Yeesh.
cold. It snows, and for some reason they have a season of intramural softball. So I pulled many a hammies because I didn't stretch enough in the cold air running down to first base. And luckily I heal like Wolverine, so I was never held down for too long with those hammy pulls. But yeah, they're awful injuries. You can do as much as you can, stretch as much, but at some point you exert yourself a little too much, take too long of a stride, and it just goes whoop. And man, the pain.
So that's a reminder to you to stretch out your hammies as much as possible. In
It's true.
fact, why don't you stretch out your hammies while we take one more quick ad break?
Oh,
We'll be right back.
my back.
The Invader Zim. My spine! Welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler, here for the last little bit of our episode for the week. We figured we'd talk a little bit about minor league baseball, specifically the Hartford Yard Goats and the Spokane Indians, the High-A and Double-A affiliates of the Colorado Rockies, having really, really strong first halves of the minor league season. The Hartford Yard Goats clinching their first playoff berth, which is really, really cool for them. The Indians also clinching a playoff berth. So the Yard Goats finished the first half with a record of 38-30, a winning percentage of .559, a run differential of +11, and just overall were a lot of fun to watch. And then you have the Indians doing much the same, 38-26, .594 win percentage, a run differential of +39. And the big thing on both of those teams, the Indians especially, has been pitching for me, but the just two really, really fun teams to watch. And, you know, you can't help but be excited for the future of this organization when you look down and you see the Yard Goats and the Indians thriving.
Yeah, it's bodes well, and I think that's what you hit on is the quality of pitching that these two teams have are really, really good and brings some hope, to the future. Where I'm trying to look up the Eastern League stats. In terms of ERA, they're sixth with a 4.03 ERA and 576 innings of work. They don't have a ton of strikeouts. They're 10th in that league with 584, but still, opponents hitting 243 against them. They have a 1.36 whip. They're not the best pitching staff, but they're pretty dang good, all things considered, overall in that league. And a pretty tough hitting league, especially. Now, you've had some guys that are done really good. Carson Palmquist has been really good. You've seen guys like Connor Van Scoyoc throw out some really good outings across the board. Mason Albright has been really good for them. As a 21-year-old, much younger than most of the guys, in that league. So there's these guys down there that are just turning in really, really good outings. Andrew Quezada has been really good. Connor Van Scoyoc's done his thing. Jared Candy's done some good stuff. Jaden Hill's been lights out at times. Just across the board, a really good pitching staff. That's offense still coming along. That's a tough league to hit in, and you're seeing some struggles there with a lot of guys. Even Amador was struggling, but they're doing enough. You're seeing some good stuff. That pitching staff, man, in Hartford, good stuff.
Yeah, and then you look down in Spokane, and the pitching staff, especially with the brand new guys, is like
borderline major league.
You've got Sean Sullivan, who has walked only 6 hitters in 68 1/3 innings of work, compared to 76 strikeouts for a .88 whip in 11 starts. And it's like, this is the guy we drafted after Chase Dollander. Like, everybody expected Chase Dollander to be good, and we'll get to him in a minute because he has been good. But Sean Sullivan has been so impressive this year. He is a blast to watch. There is no way he's not in Hartford pretty soon. And then you turn around and you've got Chase Dollander, who also has been very good. 2.84 ERA in 57 innings, 84 strikeouts to 24 walks. So, he does walk a little bit more in terms of guys, but he's been fabulous. And then other guys you don't really think about, Blake Adams and Mason Green have both been very, very good. And as has guys like Victor Juarez and Connor Stain. And this isn't even taking into account the bullpens of both of these teams, where overall, just the pitching units of both of these teams has been so good. And I like shouting out the pitching down in Spokane because you've got guys like Zach Agnos, who has 10 saves in 13 opportunities, 21 appearances. He's got an ERA of just 0.73, 30 strikeouts, 2 walks.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm trying to look up a split here of the starting pitchers in the there we go. I got to look this up. So I'm going to look up starting pitchers here in their league. So what league are they? International League?
Hartford is the Eastern League and Spokane is Northwestern.
Northwest League. There we go. Yeah, I want to look up starters in the Northwest League, which it's funny how small some of these leagues are, and they just play the same guys over and over again.
It's kind of nice, though.
Yeah, you get regular exposure to a lot of them. But, man, let me find starters. Oh, no, I can't find it.
So anyway. I'll tell you that starters in the Northwestern League leading in strikeouts are Chase Dollander and Sean Sullivan, 1-2. 84 and 76. When it comes to starter ERA, you have 4 in the top 10 for Spokane: Mason Green, Sean Sullivan, Blake Adams, and Chase Dollander.
Okay, here it is. I found it. Okay. In the Northwest League. So when it comes to team ERA, they are second behind Hillsborough with a 3.03 ERA. Among starters, they have the most strikeouts, 373. They have the third fewest walks with 108, which I think is the huge one. These are guys that are working deep into ball games, the starters especially. They have the second most innings at 347 and a third. The next closest in third place is the Everett Aqua Sox, 319 innings pitched by starters. So Spokane is working deep into ball games. They're doing very well in ball games. Their starters are giving you length, and then the bullpens come in, do their thing. Plus, you got a lot of good offense. Kyle Karros, Cole Carrig, several of these guys doing some pretty good stuff there offensively.
It's also worth noting that the 2 of the Rockies affiliates have 2 of the only complete games in minor league baseball this year, and one of them is the only complete game shutout this year. You've got Sean Sullivan, who pitched a complete game, but unfortunately was in line for the loss due to, just unfortunately the Indians offense didn't really show up that night. It happens, but it's frustrating. And then down in Fresno, Low-A Fresno, Jack Mahoney, 9 inning complete game shutout, the first complete game shutout in minor league baseball this year. And we could talk forever about, like, we're trying to focus on Spokane and Hartford because they're the 2 teams that are, playoff bound for the first half. But we could talk forever about the dearth of pitching talent from Low-A to Double-A.
But what I like here too, the fun thing with the minor leagues is they have the first and second half champion format for the playoffs. And it makes sense when you're in kind of these smaller leagues to, okay, we're going to have the first half champions, the second half champions. That makes sense because there's just not as many guys. And so Hartford gets in and everything. But it's just nice that that's the way it can work because it gives these guys something to play for in the minors. It gives them more meaning. Nice that they can compete in championship baseball and give them an opportunity. Okay, we dominated this first half. We got our spot in the playoffs, and now we can continue to work just fundamentally in other things in the second half. But I just like that the system of a first and second half winner. It's a fun little wrinkle there in minor league baseball when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, it's something that makes minor league baseball fun and unique compared to the big league game.
Mm-hmm.
And like we said, time and time again, if you're not watching minor league baseball, now is a great time to start.
Mm-hmm. I remember in 2019 with the Rookie League Orem Owls and us just kind of doing scoreboard watching. Like, oh, we lost the first half, but then we started doing scoreboard watching in the second half. In the standings, like, okay, if Ogden loses these games, or we can beat Ogden in these games, and then if we win these games, we can move up. And no, it was coming down to the wire at one point. We're like, okay, there's a chance the Orem Owls could still make the playoffs this season. Unfortunately, they didn't because Ogden Raptors were the Dodgers affiliate, and we're just so overmatched. Overmatched the Owls by quite a bit. The whole league in general. Dang Angels. But
and now half those teams aren't even minor league teams anymore.
It's true. Now they're just Pioneer League teams, indie ball teams. But it's fun to watch those, and it's cool that this is the first time since they've moved to Hartford and become the Yard Goats that they're making the playoffs. Spokane's been in the playoffs several times. Can't remember if it's their first time as a Rockies affiliate, though.
I don't believe so, no. I'd have to go back and look, but I believe they've been to the playoffs. I know Fresno has been.
Mm-hmm.
Who's not going to the playoffs this year is Albuquerque. Oof.
Yeah, there could be a scenario where the Rockies Double-A through, heck, all the way down into the Arizona Complex League to be the quote unquote playoff teams and go to the playoffs.
And you know what? For the Isotopes, hey, second half.
Yeah, there you go.
Brand new season. You're starting from zero, baby.
Yeah, and so that's the cool thing. I like that. It's just a different way to approach the game. And I threw that hypothetical out to you of like, would this ever work in MLB? Probably not. But it's an interesting thought experiment.
Let's do an in-season tournament like the NBA does.
Yeah. We already do. It's called division play. But there's a way it could work in the majors, but probably not as good as you'd want. But it's cool that there's these blueprints of winning and what could be for the Rockies with this talent that's coming along the way, especially pitching. And I think that's going to be the really interesting to watch over this next year or two even, is there's a lot of these really good starting pitchers working their way up. And what are the Rockies going to do to find space for these guys? Because currently their rotation's a little clogged up for the next year or two.
Well, at least. Think about all the guys who we lost last year that were high-rated pitching prospects in this system. Guys like Gabriel Hughes, guys like Jordy Vargas, and all these other guys. We lost a lot of guys to Tommy John last year, and they're going to come back at some point. Jackson Cox. If you look at the Rockies, current top prospects, there's a lot of pitchers in there, and they're going to have to find places to put these guys.
Yeah. At some point, I'm sorry, you got to figure out what to do with Senzatella. That contract has not worked out. And
it's not even because of his performance. It's just because of the injuries. And I admit that it's a lot of stuff that's out of his control.
Yeah. But even he had the one good season, then he really struggled the next year before he tore his ACL. So it's just kind of like middling return. Same with Kyle Freeland. We like Freeland, but his contract is kind of overpaid and middling. And then you have Austin Gomber, who's still under a year of control. Do you trade him? What do you do with Cal Quantrill? Do you trade him? He's under a year of control. Ryan Feltner, you got to figure out, is he part of your structure for the future? Peter Lambert's in that camp. They want to throw in Anthony Molina into this group.
Yeah.
So
even figuring out what we're going to do with Germán. Because my honest guess of what the Rockies want to do is he comes back and he pitches well for the second half of the season. They're going to extend him.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't hate the idea.
No,
because
because you need a leader of your rotation, and I think Germán would be the perfect guy to kind of be your Mr. Rocky pitching carry forward person leader.
but you've got him and you've got Kyle then locked down long term.
Yeah.
That only leaves you with 3 slots to go around.
Mm-hmm. And so, and the Rockies aren't going to make the tough decisions, because if they needed to, say, trade away one of those pitching prospects to get an established player, you even want them to do that type of thing. So it's an interesting problem that I don't think the Rockies have really ever had, where there is, in a way, a logjam of starting pitching that they've never really had. We're so used to them being clogged up in the outfield. They're probably going to start teaching some of these guys to become two-way players and play the outfield.
What if we draft that guy from Florida, the 2-way pitcher?
Caglione.
Yeah. I mean, they could honestly just start converting guys, but
yeah.
no, I think more of the solution is you're just going to need to stop holding on so tightly to all of your prospects.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It is okay to go, we really like this pitching prospect, but he is in a sea of other pitching prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like him for maybe a catcher or something?
A bona fide closer? Something like that. Yeah, catcher, or, we need an outfielder. This prospect's not where.
An actual first baseman?
Well, we got Michael Toglia.
Togi has been Big Mikey Toes has been legitimately a blast since he came back up. But I would still argue he has not yet locked down him as being the franchise first baseman. He still needs to put in a lot of work for that.
Yeah. But that's what we're all getting to, is them, you can't hold on to every single one of these prospects. And don't be so quick to hand out these big, long extensions where, like, I still go back. The Senzatella extension, even at the time, I was like, it's okay, but I don't understand why you'd do it for Senzatella. He had the one good year. So don't be quick to jump the gun on some of these guys.
I mean, I love Antonio Senzatella. And I get why they extended him. But then we've had all the other issues since then.
But he has not been worth a $12 million contract. Even when he got it and was healthy, he's never going to be worth $12 million a year.
It's the other one of the Rockies' bad habits, is rewarding loyalty for guys who have shown some promise and clearly like being here. They did that with Freeland, McMahon, Senzatella, Germán, and it's just something that they've always done while they've existed as a franchise. They reward the guys who have been here and done things for the team. And I get that.
That's worked out really well for them.
But you can't combine that with how iron tight they hold a grip on prospects. Remember, we almost traded Brendan Rodgers for JT Realmuto?
What a world that would have been.
One of the consistently best catchers in the league?
No, instead we had to get Chris Iannetta.
Chris
Iannetta.
We brought back Chris Iannetta, whose highlight of his time back with us was when he shattered that bat over his knee.
When he got mad that we dropped him in favor of Dom Nunez.
Yeah, that was a thing. That was a decision that they made.
Yeah, well, he's having fun with his vineyard. But
good for him. I hope retirement treats him well. But it's the thing. You can't keep the death clutch on all your prospects. Every other team is going to say, eventually you've got to make a decision on this guy. And it's okay to go, he doesn't fit into our plans, and try and get something in return. Mm-hmm. The league is littered with guys who were prospects for other teams before they struck it big.
Mm-hmm. There's only 9 starting positions on a baseball field. Not everybody's going to get a playing spot. That's just the way. Some guys are bench guys. Not everybody's going to be the next superstar.
And it's the same for pitchers. You only got 5 rotation spots, unless you're being weird with it, which most teams aren't.
Mm-hmm. It's just 40-man rosters all season long.
I wish they would. I do wish after the trade deadline, when they do the roster expansion, I do wish they would let you go up to like 30 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because most of the teams that are going to be using those spots are not teams in contention.
Yeah.
And it lets you, muck around with the lineups a little bit and get some guys some more experience.
Or it's like, you have 30 guys up with you on the team, but you have to designate, okay, these 26 are playing in this game today.
Yeah. Taxi squad it, basically.
Yeah. Then the rest, only in an emergency.
Yeah. And plus, the last thing I'll say on this, because we're about to run a little bit long, is how highly the Rockies value some of their prospects versus other teams.
How everybody else does.
Remember that Colton Welker was like a top 10 prospect for the Rockies, and he is completely out of affiliated ball right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I'll say on the matter. I think that's going to do it here for us on Affected by Altitude.
That happens. That's baseball.
Hey, there we go. I was about to say it's been a relatively soundboardless episode of the grand scheme
I
of
can
things.
just go through all 54 sound bites if we need to.
Pick one at random.
Classic. Or
Here
we go.
Remember,
Thank you, Donkey Kong.
Eat your bananas. Avoid cramps. Monkeys don't get cramps.
Yeah.
Can you get the monkeys don't get cramps on the soundboard for next time?
I could, but I do have his other one. His other famous one. My name is Munenori Kawasaki. I'm from Japan. I'm Japanese.
How can you not love that guy? I loved when he was in the league. He was just such a delight all the time. Who's really taken up the stead in his place is Shota Imanaga with the Cubs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Michael Imanaga the second.
Mike Imanaga the second. Why did the second? It just sounds cool.
It sounds cool. But that's going to do it here for us. Thanks so much for listening. As always, Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
Over on Sideline and Twitter at sideline_crowd. Also, Wednesday Rock Piles for purplerow.com. And as well, writing stuff for fansfirstsports.com. Get the views up. If you're going to go look at stuff, look at my Purple Row ones, but go look at the fans first. The more views, the more moolah.
Do one and then the other.
Yeah, read them at the same time.
And you can find me at Evan_Lang27 on Twitter. I would love to hear from you. You can also find me writing the Monday Rock Piles and weekly Pebble reports over on purplerow.com. And then you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. Skyler, it's a big jug of water.
1 gallon, baby. Got to stay hydrated.
That's true. Stay hydrated. It's hot. Don't get stretch your hammies. Eat bananas. Stay hydrated.
And stick up for your friends like Jake Cave.
Yes. In a world of Nolan Arenados, be a Jake Cave.
As a person. As a player, you can be Arenado.
Yeah. Well, be like Arenado from a couple years. Don't be Arenado from this season. You want to be Arenado from 2017, 2018, Nolan Arenado as a player. As a person, you want to be Jake Cave.
There you go.
This is a really dumb way to end the episode. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to go ahead and sign on out. Skyler, hit him with it.
Farewell!
See,
Farewell.
I think that's... There you go. I was going to say, I think it's a cop-out to use the soundboard for that.
No. What's that?
It stinks. It stinks. It stinks.
Oh,
He must be talking about the Rockies bullpen. Hey-o!
Hello. Farewell.